In places that are too quiet, people tend to overlook the signs. A door left slightly open, a faint creak with no clear source, or simply a habit of checking the locks again and again until it borders on obsession. Some might call that paranoia. But for Michael Turner, it was instinct, the one survival instinct he had left, before everything collapsed. Hi, I'm Leon Graves, and this is the Inkpath, where we explore the darker corners of truth and where the line between good and evil blurs like smoke in a cold winter night. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe, because here we don't just retell stories. We trace the things that should have been stopped long before they ever happened. Today's story begins in a remote rural patch of land called Huron, tucked deep in the heart of California. There, a small, weathered wooden cabin sat in the middle of cracked, sun-beaten fields, the home of Michael Turner, a man who lived alone and who also lived with a past. Michael had a criminal record, drugs. Because of that, he avoided police, avoided the system. Even when someone broke into his house, 3 times, he never reported it. Not because he wasn't scared, but because he knew he didn't have the right to be scared the legal way. Instead, Michael trained himself to follow a personal survival ritual. Every time he returned after being away, he would stop in silence at the door, listen carefully, and check every window, every room, as if he were patrolling the bunker that barely kept him safe. To outsiders, it might have looked like paranoia. But for Michael, it was the last warning sign his body still knew how to feel before control slipped away. Because on the afternoon of November 28, 2015, Michael did everything the way he always had. But this time, behind those silent walls, there wasn't fear waiting for him. There was the truth, and it was terrifying. As darkness crept up the rusted chimney of that crumbling house, the tragedy was already ready to ignite. Less than a minute after he lit the fire, came the scream. I still remember how Cody's younger sister, Anna Caldwell, sat across from me, clutching a thin wool blanket around her shoulders like she was still shivering from a scream she never actually heard, but one that had burned itself into her family's blood ever since that fateful night. She said, "I can't even imagine what he went through in there. Cody, he hated confined spaces. Always has." That night, after Michael Turner believed his home was finally safe, he turned on the TV, hoping to distract his ever-alert mind with something light. A sports program hummed faintly in the background, the screen dimly glowing beneath a flickering ceiling light. As he began to doze off, he noticed his body start to tremble. His fingertips were ice cold. "Weird. Why is it so cold in here?" he muttered, his breath now visible in the living room air. He walked to the far corner of the room, where the old red brick fireplace stood. With practiced ease, he stuffed in some crumpled newspaper and a few dry logs from the wicker basket nearby, then struck a match. In all his years living on the edge of danger, Michael had no idea this ordinary moment, this one spark, would become the ignition point of a tragedy he'd carry forever. The flames caught, smoke curled up gently into the air, sweet and acrid from the wood. Michael turned back toward the couch, hoping to nap as the warmth crept into the room. But then it hit. "Ah!" A scream, long, piercing, ripped straight from the lungs of something breaking. Michael recoiled instantly, heart racing like a drumline. For a moment, he thought it came from the TV, maybe part of a horror flick. But the shiver crawling up his spine, that was real. He bolted upright, eyes darting, jaw clenched. "Who's there? Who's in my house?" he shouted. Only silence answered him. The locked doors remained still. The scream dragged on, just seconds more. Then it stopped, abruptly. Michael rushed to the kitchen, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and hurried back to the fireplace. By now, the flames had grown, blazing up the flue in a column of fire. He fought the blaze like instinct, but he wasn't trying to save a house. He was, unknowingly, trying to stop someone's descent into hell.
They called us just after 3 p.m. When we arrived, the smell was still thick, smoke, character, and something else, something rotting. We couldn't believe it when the firefighters told us their most likely conclusion. Someone had gotten stuck inside the chimney.
Michael Turner was found curled on the front steps when the police arrived. His hands were blackened with soot, his eyes wide open, blank, like he was still waiting for that scream to come again, just to prove it wasn't a hallucination. He didn't know. Cody Caldwell, a 19-year-old teenager, had been trapped just inches above that fireplace for nearly 20 hours. He didn't know. That lighting the fire was the moment Cody, still alive, had begun to panic. Gasping in smoke, thrashing, clawing to escape a chimney that was quickly turning into a kiln. That scream was human, a human being, burning, second by second, from the inside out. And whether or not it was criminal guilt, the psychological sentence that Michael Turner carries is for life.
My son was a risk-taker, but he wasn't stupid. We never knew that he died like that. Cody, he just wanted to escape the present. He was 19, alone, just looking for a place to sleep.
That's how Teresa Caldwell, Cody Caldwell's mother, began our conversation on a cold, dry December afternoon in Visalia, the town her family moved to after the tragedy. When firefighters and local police arrived at Michael Turner's home at approximately 3 p.m. on November 29, 2015, something immediately caught their attention. A strange smell near the fireplace. It was smoke, ashes, and something else. Sour, rancid, like wet fabric burning. Someone muttered, "Something's dead in there." Firefighters began dismantling the hearth and removing parts of the chimney structure. One of them shone a flashlight upward into the flue and immediately recoiled, his hands trembling. There was a human body folded tightly inside the shaft. The corpse was nearly carbonized, skin darkened to charcoal, hair scorched into tight curls, limbs wedged into the soot-choked pipe. The stench of burning flesh and smoldered wood clung to the air, forcing responders to cover their mouths or vomit.
When we saw the body, I couldn't believe anyone had actually tried to squeeze through a chimney shaft less than 12 inches wide. We thought it was some sort of dare gone wrong, but the truth was much sadder.
The body was identified through fingerprints and hospital records as Cody Caldwell, male, 19, with no fixed residence, previously arrested once for petty theft. Initial theories pointed to an attempted break-in or shelter for the night. But what investigators confirmed with certainty, Cody did not die instantly. Forensic analysis showed severe internal trauma, especially in the lungs. The autopsy revealed Cody was still alive when he became trapped. He had been breathing, inhaling, and whether from desperation or poor judgment, or both, he slipped deeper into the chimney, trying to wriggle free. But the more he slid, the more he became lodged, until the fire was lit beneath him. According to the forensics team, dry wood burns at up to 600 degrees Fahrenheit in a small enclosed space like a chimney. Even without direct flames, the superheated air alone is enough to sear the lungs, eyes, and nasal tissue within minutes.
What broke me was the lung tissue. It spasmed, a sign Cody was still trying to breathe even when no oxygen remained. We found fingerprints pressed into the interior brick, like he was reaching down or trying to climb back up.
Michael Turner remained seated on his front steps throughout, eyes vacant, barely reacting when officers asked his name. After questioning, the picture grew clearer. Michael had no idea anyone was inside the chimney. During his pre-check of the house, Cody hadn't made a sound. He may have already been in a state of exhaustion or shock from staying still for so long. Only when the hot smoke reached him did his nervous system fire off. Only then did he scream. And that scream was the turning point of Michael Turner's life. I asked Teresa Caldwell, if that night could happen again, do you think Cody would still try to crawl into the chimney? She paused a long while, eyes glassy. Maybe, but not to steal. To stay warm. At 19, he truly believed the world had no use for him anymore. On the rooftop where Cody became trapped, a thick layer of grease and soot remained. It took environmental crews 2 full weeks to fully clean it. But memory doesn't scrub off so easily. My brother wasn't stupid. That's how Kyle Caldwell, Cody's older brother, began our conversation on a gray January afternoon at a small coffee shop just outside Fresno. He just wanted somewhere safe to sleep, but he picked the worst place in the world. Kyle shared that Cody hadn't come home for over 2 weeks before the incident. Friends mentioned seeing him wandering near an abandoned supermarket or sleeping rough in a park near Huron's border. While Cody never talked openly about breaking in, Kyle said he always had that look in his eyes, like he had nothing left to lose. And maybe he really did lose everything, inside a cold, dark chimney barely 12 feet high, a place with no light and no way out. After the scream, the one neighbors assumed came from a horror movie on TV, Michael Turner had rushed to extinguish the fire in panic. But the smoke kept pouring out. Firefighters arrived just minutes after his 911 call. 2 patrol cars pulled up behind them. Brick by brick, screen by screen, they took apart the hearth. What they found, no one was ready for. A human body crammed into a contorted position, legs twisted unnaturally. The upper torso blistered from heat exposure. They had to dismantle structural parts of the fireplace just to extract the remains. Not a single rescuer said a word during the first 20 minutes.
I've been on the job since 2002. I've never seen anything like that. The smell of human decay mixed with chimney soot. It seeped into our masks. We had to take them off 3 times just to throw up.
The body was immediately transported to the Fresno County Coroner's Office, where Dr. Marvin L. Doyle led the autopsy. And perhaps he was the first person to truly understand the nightmare Cody endured.
Charred lungs, thick mucus hardened inside the trachea, esophageal tissue shriveled from heat. That only happens if someone inhales superheated air while still alive. In short, Cody kept breathing. He was fighting to survive.
Cause of death? Asphyxiation from toxic smoke, and third-degree burns over more than 60% of his body. But one detail stood out above all. The soft tissue on Cody's index and middle fingers was worn away, likely from clawing at the inner bricks of the chimney in a desperate attempt to escape. Investigators also found faint traces of blood on the chimney's outer rim, indicating Cody may have been injured while climbing in and got stuck near the top first. The flue's total height was just under 12 feet, but the narrowest section, only about 11 inches across. For a teenage body, that wasn't just a dead end. It was a coffin, standing upright. Michael Turner, the man who had only just returned from a night at a friend's place, was completely broken by what happened. He was taken to the hospital in shock, then held by police for questioning. But within hours, investigators confirmed Michael didn't know Cody, had no prior contact, and had no idea someone was inside his chimney. The conclusion was devastating. Not a murder, not even a burglary gone wrong, just a horrific accident, born from 2 broken paths that tragically crossed.
The victim was a teenage boy already living in society's shadows. The survivor was a man so damaged he wouldn't even trust police. In this story, there are no true villainy, only fear stacked on top of fear.
The death of Cody Caldwell sent shockwaves through local media. But for Michael Turner, that scream from the chimney would echo through his life forever. And for the Caldwell family, it became the hanging sentence of every heartbreaking what if. What if Cody had been thinking more clearly? What if someone had heard him sooner? What if that night just hadn't been so cold? To this day, the house remains unoccupied. Michael moved away from Huron just a month after the fire, and up on that old rooftop, amid moldy shingles and rusted tin patches, a faint streak of soot still clings to where one boy once dreamed of finding shelter. I met Kyle Caldwell again just 1 week after Cody's funeral. This time at their home in northern Fresno, once filled with the voices of a mother and her 2 sons. Now, only silence and a family struggling to hold what's left. I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night, Kyle said, his eyes sunken, his fingers absently running over Cody's old keychain. I keep thinking I'll hear that scream again, even though I wasn't even there. It's hard to believe a scream traveling down a chimney could lodge so deep in someone's memory. But Kyle said something chilling. That scream, it's the only thing that proves Cody ever existed. Their mother, Lorraine Caldwell, stayed silent the entire conversation. Only when I stood to leave did she whisper, "I told him. If he left again, not to come back. But I didn't mean it, not as a mother. In the days after the tragedy, a small online forum appeared. Justice for Cody. Some blamed Michael Turner for not reporting past break-ins. Others turned their anger on the community for letting a teenage boy slip so far through the cracks that he had to climb into a chimney just to survive the night. But in the final police report from Fresno PD, the summary read, "Accidental death. Insufficient grounds for prosecution." Michael Turner never spoke to the media. He never returned to the house, which remained sealed by police for nearly 2 weeks before the property was cleared for use. Some neighbors claimed they saw him packing his entire life into a beat-up pickup truck and driving away before sunrise. The red brick house stood quiet, just like the night Cody died. The chimney was patched on the outside, but inside, where Cody was pulled from, remained untouched. It became a nameless scar in a community long used to silence. Since then, the fireplace has never been lit again. But what consumed them all wasn't fire. It was the feeling that someone, anyone, should have come sooner. Made a call, asked a question, opened a door, something, anything. Because the aftershocks of Cody's death, even time itself, has no remedy for that kind of weight. And for the Caldwell family, that silence hurts more than the scream. I yelled at him. I told him if he kept living like that, not to come home, and now he really can't. That was the last thing Lorraine Caldwell, mother of Cody Caldwell, said to me. She didn't cry. Her voice was tight even, but steeped in something heavier than grief. A private kind of regret only a parent can understand, when watching their child slowly slip out of reach. I called this chapter The Aftershocks because Cody's death wasn't an end. It rippled outward, into the cracks of the Caldwell family, into a fragile town that couldn't bear another loss, and into the conscience of Michael Turner, the man no one has seen since that scream broke the night.
I told Cody, if you keep running like this, I won't come looking for you again. And now all I wish is that I had asked him one more thing that day. Are you really okay? Maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have died like that.
Kyle wakes up every night at 2:30 a.m., the same hour Michael Turner got home that night. He says that scream, the one he only heard through a police recording, still feels like it's playing directly in his ear. It's like Cody's asking me to pull him out of there. His mother, Lorraine, said almost nothing the entire visit. The house was cold. One folding chair still sat in the corner, left empty, as if still waiting for Cody to return. No one in the family used the word mistake. They just called it what it felt like. Something that should have never happened. On social media, a group called Justice for Cody appeared within days of the incident. At first, it was just former classmates, kids who'd once sat next to Cody at lunch during one of his brief returns to school. Then strangers joined, people drawn in by a kind of pain they recognized all too well. One pinned comment read, "You don't have to be a criminal to die a tragic death." Below it, a pencil sketch of a chimney. The caption read, "Shelter for those with nowhere left to go."
At first, I thought this was just a break-in gone fatally wrong, but the more I read his file, the more I realized that boy wasn't stealing. He was hiding. Not from the law, from the cold, from the world. We chose not to prosecute, not Cody, not Michael Turner for not calling sooner, because sometimes the law doesn't have the right answers.
As for Michael Turner, the man who technically survived this story, but not emotionally, he disappeared from Huron within days after police removed the crime scene tape. Emma, an elderly neighbor 3 houses down, ran a small thrift shop. She told me in a hushed voice, "I saw him loading everything up. It wasn't even 5 a.m. No help, no words, just drove off in that old pickup. No one knows where he went." The house, that red brick home where Cody's body was found in the flue, was eventually listed for sale. No one bought it. The fireplace was patched on the outside, but the interior of the chimney, where Cody had been, was barely touched. Locals called it by a name no one ever said aloud, the scream pipe. And when the weather turned cold, no one in the neighborhood dared light a fire. Some even claimed that at night they could hear sobbing, faint and brittle, coming from the abandoned house. No one checked. Maybe it wasn't Cody. Maybe it was the guilt of an entire town echoing back each winter. I've written about a lot of tragedies, told a lot of hard stories, But rarely has the death of a teenager left a crack so deep. Maybe the real aftershock of Cody Caldwell's death is the lingering feeling that it didn't have to happen. If only someone had called. If only one person had asked a question. If only one more door had been open that night. All he needed was a little warmth, not something that would destroy him. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, you now know more than most people ever will about what happened in that break room. But the story isn't over. There's still the basement, the notebooks, and the one question no one can answer. Why? Subscribe to the Inkpath if you haven't already. And don't miss what comes next. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday. I'm Leon Graves. I'll see you in the next one.